zero level emission. Now it is the solution. It does not have any color, and this one is E1 level. It is little bit yellowish, and this one is E2. It is highly, this one yellowish, and it is having respiratory tract infection, eczema, skin irritation, and in course of time it may cause also carcinogenic, that is cancer. Our plywood small pieces. So now it is boiled with toluene. A chemical is there. As toluene is heavier than formaldehyde, so formalin is evaporated and condensed. This vapor is condensed acetone solution. If this is the testing result, how much formaldehyde contains in it. All these three have been tested. These are market sample, market plywood, which is having E2, and E1 is our normal plywood, marine and other plywoods, and E0 is our 700. Health is the principal consideration of everything. So now we should be very much careful for health. So we should go for this one E0 level. I will request every manufacturer to go for this E0 level solution.
Hello and good afternoon to all of you. Vartika Dwivedi this side.
Good afternoon, Vartika. How are you?
So all good. Yeah, I was seeing that Madhu and Komal are connecting and doing everything. Komal and Madhu and the tech team all ready? I need a go ahead from all of you because I've seen that it's already live on Facebook since few seconds.
Yes, ma'am. I think it's all fine.
All done?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for Saurabh to join. But if you want to start, you can start. He is joining
Madhu,
in.
It's already 5 minutes. We have lost 5 minutes, so I'll have to start now. I cannot wait more.
So why don't you start with the introduction?
Yes, definitely. Please start with the introductions, Komal.
Okay. So first of all, good morning to everyone. Welcome to the exclusive webinar on top strategies for healthcare system post COVID-19 by Surface Reporter and powered by Greenply Zero Emission Plywood. Today, our esteemed panelists include Mr. Ajay Gupta, Executive Director, KGD Architecture, Bengaluru. Ajay serves as a Director to Healthcare and Commercial Project at KGD Architecture, an alumni of INEOS Institute of Technology, USA. He holds an experience of over 2 decades handling large-scale work in India and abroad. Ajay has also served as guest faculty for Department of Hospital Administration at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi. Next, we have architect Ashok Kumar, President, Principal Architect, Arch and Design, Lucknow. Ashok Kumar is a gold medalist from the Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, 1983 batch. During the last 32 years of professional practices, he has been involved in the design and construction of several institutions, residential townships, commercial projects, cultural transport, and healthcare projects, which include super specialty hospitals, medical colleges, research facilities, and more. He is currently working on a wide range of large projects spread across 18 cities. Next, we have Mr. Varun Sharma, Senior Consultant, Facility Planner, AIIMS. With over 17 years of architectural experience, Varun Sharma works as a Senior Consultant to AIIMS New Delhi. He is actively engaged in the redevelopment of AIIMS campus and National Cancer Institute. During his tenure with the design consultation firm, he has undertaken hospital projects like Medanta, Gurgaon, Aster Medicity Kochi, and Glen Eagles Hospital, Hong Kong. Next, we have architect Shamit Manchanda, partner Manchanda Associates. Shamit Manchanda is a 1989 graduate in architecture from the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. He is the partner and chief healthcare architect in the firm Manchanda Associates, which specializes in healthcare architecture. He has been involved in many large-scale hospitals and healthcare projects, both for government and private sector. He is the present chairman, Northern Chapter of the Indian Institute of Architects, which is the national body for architects in the country. Our next guest is Akhil Ganatra, MD and Healthcare Lead of Clancy Global. He has grown the engineering consulting business in India with an experience of 300 million square feet over the past 15 years. Time to revenue, speed of construction for healthcare projects is representational formed a record-breaking hospital built for Tata Trust at Varanasi in just 10 months. Few of his other projects include Beach Candy Hospital, New Wing, Cloud9 Hospital, Sparsh Hospital, and Reliance Hospital, etc. Our next guest is Harish Menian, CEO, MGN Healthcare. He is the healthcare management professional with almost 2 decades of experience, responsible for successfully starting and turnaround of many multi-specialty quarantine care hospital and Medicity projects for Manipal Group, Fortis Healthcare, and Parkway Pentai India. Out of the last 18 plus years of experience as a professional, having spent 13 plus years with 3 of the biggest and most professionally managed healthcare organization in India and SCA, and second largest healthcare organization in the world. Then we have Dr. Saurabh Lal, Head of Hospital Operation Max Healthcare. Dr. Lal is a doctor turned management professional with exceptional multifaceted experience in healthcare management at top-notch hospitals. He has contributed his expertise toward medical excellence, service excellence, quality, IT, out-of-hospital, home care services, medical tourism, operation management, and more. Dr. Deepika Singhal, our next guest, is the board member Action Group of Hospitals, a recipient of Sri Shakti Puraskar for her outstanding contribution to the healthcare sector in bringing forth affordable, comprehensive healthcare for all. Dr. Singhal's forte lies in the containment to operational efficiency. As a result of this, cost of treatment is lower in the Action Group of Hospital, and she could achieve world-class facilities which are accessible to the poor patients. Under her able guidance, Action Cancer Hospital was awarded the Best Cancer Hospital in 2016 as well as 2020. And Sri Balaji Action Medical Institute was awarded the President's Appreciation Award. Our next guest is Mr. Partha Nath, Deputy General Manager, Greenply. With a total work experience of over 19 years in the building material and interior infrastructure, Mr. Partha Nath is the Deputy GM of Greenply Industries Limited. He is the mechanical engineer graduate from NIT Jalandhar. He will be sharing some of the important R&D done on the products for making them safe and environment friendly. And finally, the moderator of today's session, Vartika Trivedi. Vartika Trivedi is one of the top architecture and design journalists and publisher in India, who is also the founder of Asia's largest platform for women in design called WAVE Asia and editor-in-chief of Surface Reporter magazine. Vartika is an award-winning entrepreneur, speaker, and Asia Book Record holder who is passionate about water awareness and helping startups to rise. Her last education was senior management studies from IIM Calcutta. We are also very proud to inform that Greenply is our powered by partner in today's webinar for healthcare infrastructure. Greenply Industries believes in the twofold principle, which is take as little from nature as possible and give back a lot more. With years of R&D, Greenply has developed a special plywood. With this philosophy in mind, Greenply Industry introduces CARB certified zero emission plywood products. Green Club Plus 700 plywood is India's first zero emission plywood. It comes with an antibacterial coating to ensure the health and safety of every home. This is also India's first 2-in-1 plywood that conforms to IS 10701 structural grade and IS 5509 fire retardant properties. Passed through the Pentafite check, this plywood promises maximum precision, greater strength, and superior quality. So with that note, I welcome all for their part. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Komal. And without wasting more time, I would like to directly shoot the first question. So for all the attendees out here, though I was not expecting even 200 today because there was some technical glitch, and no, we could not send the joining link to a lot of people. We have been receiving messages in the morning also to get the joining links and all that, but whatever we could send, we have, but we could not. Otherwise, most of our webinars are around 500 to 1,000 people attending. I'm sure those who are not able to attend will be attending the live session, which is going on in several channels of our social media and other things. So to start with, I would like to shoot the first question, and that is about what are the kind of new needs that have generated or that have surfaced due to the outbreak of COVID-19, that we could understand that and realize that, okay, these are the new needs and we need to address in the healthcare segment. I would like to start with Architect Shamit Manchanda.
Good morning, rather good afternoon, everybody. And thank you, Surface Reporter, for initiating this very important dialogue, which is going to be very critical, especially for healthcare designers. Pandemics like this have had a cycle of about 100 years. The last major pandemic was 1918, the Spanish flu. And but if it is proven that this was a man-made virus, as some people are talking about it, such occurrences could increase more frequently. And this pandemic has exposed the preparedness of our healthcare infrastructure to a great extent, not only in India, but all over the world. Going forward, we will have to relook at how we design our healthcare facilities so that they can easily adapt themselves to the requirements for such an infectious disease. Even more emphasis will have to be given to infection control, both in terms of physical planning and, more importantly, in terms of the air conditioning design that we do, the HVAC design. The recent announcement by the government is also highlighting the need for setting up infectious disease wards and proper labs at every district level. So we need to design our hospitals to run both as COVID hospitals as well as non-COVID hospitals, because hopefully this infection will eventually find a solution in terms of either a cure or a vaccine, and eventually it will go away. But till that time, such happens, we can't eventually the hospital cannot run as a COVID hospital throughout its life cycle. It'll be too expensive to run. In terms of detailing, at the moment we had triaging only in emergency wards. Now we'll have to have large triage areas for segregation of patients right at the entry of the hospital before even a patient or a relative comes into the area. So triaging is going to be a very important case. Going forward from the triage. Yeah.
I come to the other questions very soon, and we are going to discuss and elaborate on that too. Okay. So what takeaway I've taken from Architect Manchanda is about creating flexible sort of things, because it cannot be just COVID hospitals. It has to be, how to be flexible so that the infectious and the other critical things can be taken together. Labs we need more labs throughout, and then the air conditioning thing, which is a major issue, with the healthcare segment, and so many people have pointed out on that. It's one, among the new needs that have surfaced. Now, with the same question, I would like to go to Architect Ashok Kumar, and I would like to know what, in a very crisp manner, what are the few needs that have surfaced led by COVID?
First of all, good afternoon, all of you, and thank you, Surface Reporters, for bringing me here and trying to connect with so many people around. It's really nice to interact on this. So now, as you raise a question, and in that context, it's basically the way I look at it is that till such time the vaccine is available, we have to live with the new normal as such. So this is going to be a new way of life as a new normal. And we have to see this whole thing in two aspects. One, that tangible aspect of the healthcare infrastructure and the situation as such out of pandemic. And the second is intangibles. The tangible one would really include all these kind of things as a matter of infrastructure coming up. And due to pandemic, in a very sudden move in last about 3 months time, we have come out with a lot of upgradation in different hospitals, public and private both. Especially in public sector, there have been beds with no gases outlets and no ventilators. So now actually they have been upgraded to have more gas outlets and even more ventilators for that matter. Similarly, in places where we had lesser well-equipped situations, we have tried to gain on those issues also. And other things like PPE kits, the mask and all these sanitizers and so on. So these are all components of, you can say, tangibles. And these definitely have come a long way in terms of giving a big relief. As you know, in our country, we had almost about 30 to 40,000 ventilators at the time of the pandemic striking down. And now with the government's initiative and other people also coming and joining the whole thing, the number has gone up almost about 50, 60. Whereas the total target of the ventilators that we had at that point of time was to have close to 80,000 something. So with this much number in mind, we are still in the stage of procurement at the various levels. So that's one thing. And second is about intangibles. Now, when all these kind of infrastructure facilities are there, we have to be more careful about how to use it and how to really make it more compatible to users. So that aspect is more of a intangible one, where all these corona barriers, they have devoted their utmost best in terms of not even going to the families and homes. They've been quarantined for almost about 14 days and 2 months and 1 month and so on. So this is the kind of situation that really have made us learn that we have to be more human and more concerned about the cure and care. That is.
Thank you, Architect Ashok Kumar. Thank you so much. So he has brought in the points of the tangibles and non-tangibles. Quickly, I want to move to the other panelists, and in few words, I would like to know what are the new needs. I would like to start with Harish.
Hi, Vatika. How are you?
Hi, all great, good.
Yes. Thanks for having me and MGM as part of this.
Our pleasure.
And welcome both all the panelists, and I'm really happy to be part of this. In few things, I think, I always believe that, this, when people set into a complacent mode, God always has its own mechanism to, re-engineer and reconfigure the system. I think that is what happened as far as, COVID is concerned across industry, not only healthcare. I was writing about an article recently, and I also read that it is like 9/11 of hygiene across India, across the globe. What has happened is it has taught us, I think people are looking at a lot of negatives about this COVID, but a very good silver lining which has happened because of COVID in healthcare specific is that the compliance of hand hygiene has become 100%. And this was a battle across all the hospitals to get 100% hand hygiene compliance. So what has happened because of that is your cross-infection rate across hospitals have become completely zero. So ICU compliance of hand hygiene has become excellent. In fact, CEOs are washing more hands than the nurses nowadays. So what has happened, this has taught us something which was a fundamental flaw in the system has got corrected because of this. That's one part of it. What has this done to the entire workflow? Usually what happens during a pandemic, which is of this nature across the globe, it changes the consumer behavior overall. I think that has been a norm across the globe. I think we have seen that, when swine flu happened, there was a change in consumer behavior. Similar to this, COVID has happened, and it has changed. It's taken a sea change in the consumer behavior across the globe. I heard Mr. Manchanda saying that, people are trying to create the infras outside. And that is exactly what I meant by consumer behavior changing. And the customer, as well as the product innovator, everybody is going to change the way, the process, the workflow is going to change across the board. Now, what has done, many hospitals have started their own outpatient block outside the hospital. So the real outpatient has really gone out of the hospital in literal sense. So they have created a semi-temporary flu clinics and fever clinics outside the hospital. So the OPD, so used to be the outpatient block, has gone out of the hospital today. So that's one part of it. Technological innovations, which were 5 years ahead of time, has been got adopted now itself, right? So people never thought about robotics in healthcare. People never thought about thermal imaging in healthcare. People never thought about using UV disinfection in healthcare. So all these have started being adopted. People never, telemedicine, I remember 20 years back when I was heading telemedicine for Manipal, I used to go office to sell the concept. Today, and that was struggling till last month. The concept of telemedicine was struggling till last month. And suddenly, that's such an upsurge in telemedicine, and the uptake of telemedicine across industry has gone up 200, 300, 500%. It's purely because the need has completely changed and how the business processes completely reinvented. Now today, hospitals are publishing data on how much consults online they have done. So imagine, nobody even worried about telemedicine for 20 years, a technology which was lying and which could have been used more effectively to reach people. So technology adoption has gone skyrocketing. No, skyrocketing is not the word. So now people are innovating to the level where they can circumvent all these areas and reach customers much faster, much easier. And the last point I would like to bring in terms of the infra changes. I think there was always a requirement to have enough number of ICU with positive and negative pressures inside the hospital and rooms with negative pressures to be there. But unlike any other Western country, our hospitals in India, I think off late for the last decade and a half, most of the hospitals are built to hospital. Earlier, the concept was pick up a hotel and convert into a hospital. So that was an easier thing a decade and a half back. Now there are built to hospital concepts happening. And now what is taking place? Now people are looking at more positive pressure and negative pressure rooms to be created as part of the new infra. A lot of hospitals are changing their current infrastructure to have more negative and positive pressure rooms. This is going to stay, but we have to live with it.
You have really brought in a very different kind of a perspective, the positive part, I would say, and thank you for that. It's really the need of the hour. So the takeaway from Harish, what he has said is about level 9. Can we ever imagine, like we have never thought of level 9 of hygiene? Yes, the adoption of tech that has happened, and the discussion that we are having about the requirements of the updation of the infra design and all that. These questions were always there. These requirements are always there. But then this COVID-19 has led to this. So with the same question, I would like to quickly go to Dr. Lal, and then Varun Sharma, and then Ajay Gupta. And Akhil, I'll come to you in the implementation part. So not on this. So yes, Dr. Lal, yes.
Yeah, Vartika, how are you doing?
Great, wonderful, wonderful.
So I think I will actually take on from where Harish left, and he and I happen to be in the same boat. I think, having led a lot of hospitals from project phase to the operations phase, there used to be a very common anecdote that we used to, talk to our project heads about. And we used to say that now the hospital is in project phase. When you get out of the hospital, then is when we will get in, the operations guys. So I think that has now changed, and the time for healthcare and design to unite has happened. The operations and projects cannot be two different teams working in silos anymore. And hence, now operations involvement, I mean, I'm sure there'll be a new specialty of hospital building that will come in, which will be, operations projects, where, we will have ops people as part of the projects team, and, doing all the nitty gritty patient life cycle studies, time motion studies, not after the hospital is built, but before the hospital is actually planned on a sheet of paper. The next thing, I won't really push in too much on that. Harish has given a very good insight. The next thing I would want to place is that in today's time, what is happening with us as hospital, chiefs is that we go ready for a cricket match, and when we reach the ground, we realize, boss, this is a baseball ground. So the playgrounds are changing, almost on a daily basis for us, and that's what brings the innovation and that out of the box thinking for us, where we go prepared with an open mind, and suddenly, we have that ability to switch on and switch off on a couple of parameters. which at one point in time, maybe 3 months ago, used to be the norms and the rules of the game, but that don't exist anymore. The third is that, an example that comes to my mind is from cricket. There used to be 5-day cricket, and then when we were kids, we used to go watch those 5-day matches. Then people realized there's a lot of time that goes in. Then came the one-day internationals. And finally, when the one-day internationals were done away with because they didn't have enough spectators, came in the T20. So the T20 match specifically starts at 6 o'clock in the evening and ends at 11. So it's a very thought out strategy where, an office goer goes to office, comes back at 5 o'clock in the evening, and the match starts at 6. So, the bridge between the consumer and the, service provider is being bridged somewhere. And that's what is very, very important in hospitals. Having said that, I think something which we have been trying to promote for a long time, but has never been able to come into the mainstream is home care services. I think this is the time when home care services need to come in. On a daily basis, keep advising patients to stay home, avail home care services, because, we want to have a very clear distinction on what and who requires a hospital. We don't have beds today. So morning till evening, the largest challenge I face today is, availability of beds. So that's where I think that's a great
Dr. Lal, I'll come to those things as well, and you have really pointed out those two points. The as a department and the home care services. So I will little bit change the question for Architect Varun Sharma, and I would like to know what are the key challenges. What are the key challenges? COVID-19 has led to and healthcare facilities are facing. Yes, Architect Varun Sharma, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Vartika, for inviting me to the webinar. See, we should look at two aspects. We have to work out a plan which is immediate response to the COVID emergency, and also look at the long-term implications of this emergency on design of healthcare facilities. So there are some operational changes which we have adapted to. One of them, to reduce the overcrowding in the outpatient unit, outpatient departments, we have started online registration system to a next level. So 50% of the patients who visit have appointments beforehand. So this prevents kind of overcrowding in the waiting areas of the outpatients. Secondly, for the same objective, what we are doing is we are demarcating some of the seats not to be occupied, I think, for the social distancing. So there is minimum gap in the waiting areas while the patients come and wait for their their turn.
Right.
And
right.
so beyond that, I think if we are looking at current hospitals, they can undergo expansions. They need to increase the capacity to meet their immediate requirement. But they have to bear in mind that there has to be a complete segregation of immunocompromised patients from these suspected or susceptible patients. Reason being, there are chances of high chances of cross infections, because when we use shared facilities, especially the support areas, there are chances that the infection can go from COVID dedicated department to the other part of the hospital. And what we would recommend is, if we need to, we can start with developing new modular hospitals dedicated for this COVID-19 emergency. And these guidelines have been set by a National Center of Disease Control. And they have given a clear segregation. How do we organize our spaces as per hierarchy, depending upon the criticality of the patients. So
okay,
there would be case.
I would like to know more about this modular, the facilities, how they would be created, and which is coming in the following question. Before that, before I move to Architect Ajay Gupta, whom I'm looking for answering a different set of questions related to architecture, I would like to get the insights from Dr. Deepika. Dr. Deepika, you are running, you're managing a healthcare facility, and we discussed about the challenges that you are facing, after COVID. So, could you please highlight some of the key aspects of the challenges that you're facing right now due to, the sudden emergencies?
Hi, thank you for bringing me to this panel. And definitely, as a promoter of a hospital, the challenges that we are facing right now, or in general, the healthcare segment is facing, is definitely, as mentioned by Varun, is the modularity. So if the structure is in a modular way, it has to have certain percentage of the infrastructure, which is an integrated part of the whole organization and can work as an independent area as and when the need arises, as in the current scenario of COVID. Wherein it can be demarcated from the main functioning area, and the COVID area can be a separate area with all the facilities independent, like laundry, like sewage treatment, even the kitchen, because these are the areas, if they are integrated together with the main hospital during the infection times, it can lead to a major catastrophe. So these are the challenges that we face. On top of it, as mentioned by Mr. Ajay, about the air conditioning. Air conditioning is definitely a major challenge. We need to have a negative pressure, and the modularity required to convert the normal beds into intensive care beds, which is the need of the time. As we understand, most of the patients, they are home quarantined. So whoever is coming to the hospital, they may need intensive care, and to have the sufficient number of intensive care beds, there should be a modularity to convert the normal beds to intensive beds. That is the challenge that we are facing right now. Technology, as Mr. Harish mentioned, definitely this is the role of technology right now, and everybody is open to the idea of converting themselves into more technology advanced. The staff, the healthcare worker, everybody is afraid to work in that kind of a scenario. So how to provide safety to them? That is a major concern. And how to get more capacity within the hospital. Seeing the current scenario, it is going to be a big problem, the kind of limitations of the bed. As Mr. Lal mentioned, every day there is a big list of patients waiting to get admitted, where to admit them, how to admit them. So that modularity to increase the capacity as and when required. These are the challenges the architecture people should look into whenever they are planning a new organization.
Thank you, Deepika ji. Very nicely, you have summarized the remaining needs that I was looking at, to share with the audience. Now, moving quickly to Architect Ajay Gupta, I'd like to know how is architectural design going to respond to this kind of challenges and needs?
Am I mute? So thank you, Vartika, for having me on the session. I would actually like to echo Shamit and Harish and Dr. Lal in some fashion, and I'll take a positive spin on it because I think everybody knows the negative of COVID. I will take a positive spin. I think Harish has all taken a positive spin. So the whole idea of future ready is gone for a toss. There's no future ready because we don't know future. So that's one step, which means we have to have flexibility in design, not future ready. I think that's you can call it modularity or flexibility, whatever that is. I think that in design is going to show more and more. We need to know to do something which we don't know about. That's one. Second, I think all operators, and they will probably echo with me, wanted to be asset light, right? Assets are becoming very expensive. Capital assets of a hospital is very expensive. OPDs play a big chunk of real estate in the hospital. Telemedicine, home care has been pushed into customers because of this pandemic. It already existed. Nobody wanted to use it. This happened, everybody's okay with it, right? Everybody's okay with the idea of a virtual consultation with a specialist. So I think hospitals become asset light. They will become only critical care more and more. Once you become more critical care, you can load isolations or quarantine spaces more and more to the hospital, which should be decentralized anyhow. It should not be a single hospital sitting in the middle of the city, which takes care of pandemics, right? It has to be decentralized. The way containment zone works or red zone works, hospitals have to operate within the containment zone and the red zone. So I think there'll be a paradigm shift. I think healthcare providers wanted that. Forget the COVID. COVID is a bad thing, but they wanted, the digital platform to be applied to healthcare. It has happened. It's going to help reduce real estate. It'll help reduce real estate for non-critical. It'll help use real estate for the real things, which is more now isolation, quarantine. All that spaces will be created in the design philosophy as we move forward. I think it's a very positive sign if you can just live with this negative of what is happening right now. It is very positive for the healthcare market right now as we see it. That's my 2 cents to that.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So what you have mentioned and what I could take away from this is about decentralization. The major thing would be decentralization of the healthcare spaces, of the real estate, and using the real estate where the real needs lie. Now, going a little bit ahead with the needs and all that, I would like to go to Akhil, who is really so sweet and waiting, for his turn. So, Akhil, I would like to come directly to the interior part and would like to know during our discussions we have you have shared some of the things like which you'll be seeing as new materials, new products, something new we are going to see in the healthcare space, in the interiors for real good reason, right? So Akhil, I would like you to start with this, and then we will come to the how-to of the implementation part for the challenges that we have discussed right now. Start with the materials and products that we might be seeing new in the healthcare segment. Over to Akhil. Unmute, Akhil.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me over. In terms of what you're saying with regards to products, I'd like to touch 2 things really, because when we're talking about engineering and construction, there's one, the constructing part of it, and then there is the asset intelligence part of it. Dr. Lal and Harish both have said that technology is getting embedded into every parts of the hospital. So first, with regards to what you've asked, Vartika, in terms of materials, and this is something that Ajay has covered as well. Even when we're building fast hospitals, it's dry, hybrid, and modular technology that's there. So there is no single answer. It's an orchestration of several technologies. What we find while we are doing a lot of work is that most of these technologies become very vendor-driven, and one aspect of it gets exaggerated more than the others. So for example, when we did the hospital at Varanasi, we had steel structures. Steel structures have been around for the longest time. They are the fastest to build, and social distancing, 600,000 square feet built by 60 people only in terms of the steel structure. Dry walls, adhesive-based flooring. So there's a lot of dry, hybrid, and modular technology out there. It's about orchestrating these technologies to deliver an architect's design intent and a promoter's operational intent. So there's no cookie cutter model that you can say, okay, that's it, every time it's going to happen like this, and a new hospital is going to get built. So that's from the perspective of, sort of constructing hospital and how dry, hybrid, and modular technology can be accentuated. Second is with asset intelligence. Technology is coming into the hospitals, but we need a common data lake of these inputs coming in. If you take the example of Uber can give today the best urban planning advice is because they're tracking how people are moving within the city. One of the key intelligences that we don't have in hospitals is, do we have the intelligence of what our asset flow is, what our asset density is, how can we reduce energy? In terms of intelligent building management systems, in terms of healthcare specific technology, all these sources are giving many data points. Again, here as well, it becomes vendor specific where you executed each technology within silos versus thinking how asset intelligence can give the feeder from one technology to the other technology and get a better understanding of assets are getting used. The disconnect between design and asset use, like Dr. Lal pointed out, is huge because we've designed it and then we don't go and see how it is actually getting used, the facility. It's not also about just the handover. Remote intelligence is very easy to implement in today's days. So designers who build hospitals can actually get intelligence from operational hospitals at various aspects and start advising on how things can be better. So sort of to close this, I'd say if you know what's going on, then we can improve it. It cannot be a case of my guess against your guess. It's a data industry, let's use it.
Wonderful, Akhil, and the energy is visible actually. So the great disconnect, it's a very, very important topic, and I think we'll need 1, 2, 3 webinars to actually discuss on that. So much of things to discuss about the disconnect between, designing and the asset management and the intelligence and the embedding of technology and all that part. But we are touching on the facts, and we are, trying to create information point wherein we address the new needs, we address how the solutions or the suggestions, could be to address those challenges and all that. And at the same time, how architects and designers can understand that, okay, these are the new solutions, or these are the new, solutions that we need to find out for. So moving ahead with this thing, I would like to go to our next guest, and that's Partha, Mr. Parthanath. Okay, Mr. Parthanath, you have mentioned about, and we have discussed about, you're having a product which is meant for the healthcare facilities, and you people have done some sort of R&D. So what is the thing that you have done, and what is different? Is something really possible? And if it is so, and it is really meant to be safe, then why are not others doing it?
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon to all, and I would like to thank Vartika for taking up such a pertinent topic for this webinar. Yes, COVID-19 has firmly established the need for active actions and establishment of robust, scalable, and agile healthy infrastructure in the building material segment. In this paradigm shift, if you see, we have already, it's an important thing that our products are wisely chosen, as has been mentioned by Mr. Harish and Mr. Ajay, that the consumer behavior is going to change, and the new normal would definitely be on a health safe products from now onwards. Greenply, as a socially conscious company, we are continuously doing research on these domains, and we actually have come up with products which are health safe. These products are CARB certified products which has got a zero emission. Now coming into emission, how this is related to your healthcare, I would just give an example. Like when you talk of air pollution, all that comes into our mind is the black smoke that comes out from any chimneys or hundreds of vehicles stuck in traffic. So what actually is seen that whatever air is outside probably is worse than what is inside. But a study by EPA, that is the Environmental Protection Agency at US, it has done a study, and it shows that 2 to 5% of the air inside is much more impurer or worse than what is at outside. So what we need to do is we need to have products inside which would help in having a healthy environment, so that whatever we inhale gives a healthy lungs to us. Now this COVID, we all know that it affects the lungs. One of the thing in plywood, like I'm from plywood industry, this Greenply actually does lots of research in different things to improve the quality of the plywood. As we can see that there is a chemical which is known as formaldehyde. This formaldehyde, when exposed to for a longer period of time, has got ill health effects. Like a short time, if it is exposed, we'll have some kind of itching, irritation to the eyes, ear, nose, and for a prolonged period of exposure, it can lead to COPD, that is your pulmonary disorder. And other than that, it can also lead to your pharyngeal cancer. It is carcinogenic. So how this is emitted is from the different plywood material or different wooden products that are used. All of them use formaldehyde, and there is basically some free formalin which is already available. And moreover, as we can see,
Mr.
now,
Parthanath, I would like to know, how is your product different?
Well, our product is different in such a way that if you see plywood in India, it is almost only 5 to 7% are organized. Others are totally unorganized sector. So whatever products all are making, it's totally on a category which is having more of your formaldehydes, which are free in environment, which reacts with our lungs, creating a problem in the lung. So we have created a plywood which is free from these formaldehydes. Free formaldehyde is there. So whatever plywood we are making right now, the niche products, it does not have that ill effect of formaldehyde. Now, in order to do that, it was not an overnight thing. Our R&D team had taken up a lot of days in creating this product. And whatever we have made this particular product, this has been certified by the CARB, CARB. There is a California Air Resource Board, and this has been tested by external agency also. So this product, like your Club Plus 700 and Club 500, these two products have been certified as.
Is it really possible to be zero emission? Is it possible? I think you people are using formaldehyde, isn't it?
We are using formaldehyde. Like zero emission, what actually is meant by zero emission is that whenever there is a plywood is there will be some kind of emission of formaldehyde from the plywood. Now what happens is, this is because of the availability of free formalin in the plywood. Now, if we can use a scavenger which can eat up that free formalin, we can take up that formalin from the plywood and we can make a zero emission plywood, which we have actually made with the case of Club Plus 700 and Club 500. This one we have already introduced, and other than that, we are actually using some kind of antibacterial compound also over the plywood to make it health safe.
Okay, okay, thank you so much. So going to the next question, I have this question for Akhil again, and Akhil, you will start with, and then I'll move to Architect Ashok Kumar and Architect Manchanda for the same. So Akhil, just let me know about the how are the futuristic hospitals going to be? What, if you can tell us a little bit about the world's, some of the best facilities that I think you have also worked for one or two of them. So if you could just tell about the uniqueness of those facilities and how India can learn from them.
I'd like to keep this brief because I've covered a little bit on asset intelligence already, but it's a case of remote intelligence, right? You don't need people who are operating assets to be physically in the asset to get the intelligence and guide the on-ground people. It's about also covering multitudes of aspects of it. So while you've got the equipment that can be smart, you've got sort of the systems that can be smart, it's also about getting feedback loops. A lot of the developed nations have spent tremendous amount of R&D money in terms of making sure that the occupants of the assets have an opportunity to give a feedback back to the asset, whether it's via app or whether it's pressing some buttons. To sort of close this point on remote intelligence simply, because I can keep going on forever, but intelligent building management systems have been around for a long time. They've become a checkbox within assets now. All the hospital assets will say, yes, we have intelligent building management systems. But are we monitoring every circuit there? Can we optimize energy every month on month or year on year by taking actions that are suitable for it? Similarly, predictive maintenance, that's a large thing that good assets do. They see the trends of every system working at an hourly basis to identify an anomaly, saying that before something breaks down, let's have it rectified.
Okay.
So, in terms of what the future of assets or healthcare is going to be, it's going to be a feedback loop of all the systems and the people and the physical assets itself coming back to a remote intelligence for making it more efficient and changing with the needs, because the needs are not going to remain consistent. Today, COVID has changed it.
Yes, I got this thing, and I'm sure, with this point that you have shared, I would like to know what is the current status? What is the current status of the healthcare facilities in India as compared to the developed countries, and where are we standing? And I would like any one of you to respond. Maybe I'll start with Architect Manchanda and Architect Ashok Kumar, and then any one of you can respond quickly. Like, what is the status of India in terms of healthcare systems, facilities, and infrastructure? Where are we standing?
Healthcare infrastructure in India is a mixed bag. On one end, we are providing basic healthcare to the poor section of the society. And on the other end, we have large hospital chains like Medantas, the Fortis, and etc., who are JCI compliant. So there is a complete range of facilities that are available. In terms of facilities, we are lacking in terms of hospital beds. We are around 1 bed per 1,000 population. We aim to be by 2050 to reach to about 2 beds per 1,000 population, whereas the WHO talks about at least 3 beds per 1,000 population. So definitely we are lacking in that aspect. But we do have all kinds of facilities available, and the thing is being improved by the government in terms of setting up a lot of new hospital, new AIIMS projects are coming up. I think 22 of them. All district hospitals are being upgraded to medical colleges. This will not only increase the bed capacity, but also increase the number of doctors that are going to be available in the country. Things are happening, but yes, we are lacking in terms of in actual number of beds. But on the other end, we have these JCI compliant hospitals, which have the best medical care being provided to people not only in India, but people who come here for medical tourism.
Right. India gets a lot of people for medical tourism. And with the same question, I would like to go to architect Ashok Kumar. He has also, designed a lot of healthcare facilities. And I would like to know if you can give me a little bit of insight also into the spread of the healthcare facilities. We know India is not only about urban, it's majorly about the rural infrastructure as well. So how are we placed in that sense? And as architect Manchanda has shared about the one bed for 1,000 to we are going to 2, and World Health Organization tells about 3,000-4,000. Where are we standing according to you, architect Ashok Kumar? And after that, Dr. Lal, and then Deepika ji and Harish ji and all, I would like all of you to put on your insights into the same thing. Please, over to you.
Well, about the kind of infrastructure that we're talking about, I think we are in a right direction. No doubt, we are way behind today. But then, as you know, the government is really pushing things forward in terms of having more medical colleges and more hospitals here and there. And it's very established fact that all these district headquarters hospitals, they are being turned into medical colleges. And this will definitely enhance our human resource of the healthcare infrastructure, which is highly deficient today. That is one. And secondly, there is one talk going around that we should have more infectious diseases hospital. That's one of the topmost priority of the government today, because in the recent past, whether it's Ebola or maybe HIV or anything for that matter, in the recent past we have had all these infectious diseases wherever we had, and whenever and whatever number we had tough time to deal with. And therefore, government is now focusing towards having these infectious diseases hospitals as a separate entity and a separate module altogether, so that they don't really burden these normal running hospitals. That's one. And coming to the fact that the government has focused on enhancing the healthcare infra in a larger context, and that is how we are trying to see that once this comes in, the infectious disease will be dealt with separately. However, the hospital that we are having today in private and public sector both. Public sector, they are having right from let's say state capitals to district headquarters to other rural areas, and there the numbers are good, but then facilities are not so good. So we have to really kind of upgrade them.
I will take this one thing that you have beautifully said, and that's like we are in the right direction, but way behind. Okay, I think that kind of sums up where is India today, and I think all of you will agree. So I will move to the next question, and with so many of experts sitting here with so much of knowledge, information, I cannot but ask one thing that as we are getting ready to be really equipped with a lot of important additions and implementation in our healthcare facilities. What are the areas, which are the areas you think are the key areas that needs to be addressed in terms of architecture and the interior design of the healthcare spaces? Be it zoning, be it segregation of spaces, be it the air pressure issue that every healthcare facility is facing today, be it about decentralization. If you can elaborate on that, I think our attendees would like to know about those things. Let's talk about solutions now. So any one of you can start with, and let's go for a high-speed interactive one. Yes, Architect Ajay Gupta, please.
I'll take that. I personally feel today in India, we are designing healthcare facilities to level to any global, actually. To be very frank, I have done hospitals in US, Middle East, Africa, India, at least 10 countries. And today we are at par. The problem is not the design or the execution, it's actually the financial modeling of that, who it supports and how it works is the issue. Within the spectrum of India, obviously we have the worst hospital and the best hospital. And who it caters to, that's a different story. I'm not an expert in that, but we have the capacity and we are doing it today. I would get operated in India before US today as a patient, right? I want to do that. I believe that today. So I think we are there. It's just what's the percentage of that? And how is the financial modeling supporting that, right? Who can go there? Who all can go there and do that? So that's the thing. Design-wise, we are at par and beyond. Today, we design better hospitals in India than US. Because as I'm saying,
Harish, would you like to add to that, Harish?
So I would like to add to what Ajay said. I think, gone are the days, I think Indian healthcare system was looked down. I firmly believe we are far ahead in terms of our infra capability and the science which we bring onto the table. And in terms of that, I think I'm very proud of the fact that the industry is leading the flag bearers. Private healthcare contributes almost 85% of the services delivered as far as healthcare is concerned in India. And that's also have to go by saying that, the world-class infrastructure are now in tier 3 cities also. We are no more dependent on, world-class so-called, the creme de la creme only can access a wonderful infrastructure. Now, if I say that the Medanta in Patna is equally good, equal to a Medanta in probably a good B-town city like a Hyderabad, hospitals. There are hospitals coming up in cities which are like unimaginable. In a rural city in MP, there is a hospital which has got so much of technology and infrastructure built in, which you can't even imagine. So I'm saying it's far reaching in India. So there is no doubt about the fact that, infra is not growing. The fact is how the infra is leveraged across each segment across India, actually. So that's more important. As one of the panelists just now mentioned, what we needed is that how government is now very serious about healthcare. We are the least spending country in India as far as healthcare is concerned. We spend less than Pakistan and Bangladesh as far as healthcare is concerned. So that's the sorry state of affairs. But having said that, all the GDP of 2% which India invests in healthcare, 90% of that goes in paying salaries to people in healthcare. So what happens is there is no capex investment which goes to building and infra to grow further. Now this pandemic has been a big eye opener to look at how the healthcare infrastructure and disaster management protocol going to be exercised in each city, each district, each town, everything to the minutest level. And there are papers being actually getting circulated within the FICCIs and the CIIs to have a smarter city concept integrated with a good health, modeling system to be built into it. So that is where the future is going to go forward, because there will be city hospitals which are taking care of disaster management, sitting outside the city itself in the peripheries, so that the city inside doesn't get contaminated. So these are the modular changes which will happen in healthcare with technology coming in front.
Thank you, Harish.
Sorry, just to add one point.
Sure.
One point. I think Harish I would want somebody who's in Chennai, go see MGM Hospital. I'm not trying to promote MGM because we design and he operates. So please see, I think it's worth seeing what is today's condition in healthcare. And I think you should see MGM as a benchmark to see that.
I would like to know, now go to architect Varun Sharma. And I would like to know, he's from All India Institute of Medical Sciences. I would like to know about the same question about how are we at, in what level are we in terms of global best healthcare facilities?
So, about AIIMS, I can tell they have very good key performance indicators in terms of patient safety, because here the operational processes are streamlined. There is full infection control, and patient safety is also there. There are minimum number of falls, and every error is being recorded. So I can talk about our institute. We are actually one of the best hospitals in Northern India, and other than just treatment, we have other verticals like education and research also. Other than that, I would also try to throw some light on quality aspect rather than quantity. Quality is actually as important as increasing the capacity or our total healthcare infrastructure. The quality of healthcare service has to be operated by design and operations as well. So in design, we would see is we'll be looking at more single rooms or single isolation rooms in future, because Western guidelines, they kind of recommend single rooms over multiple bed wards. Reason being for infection control. And, how does it help is like in a case of COVID patient, during intubation, there will be aerosols released into air and which will go to air conditioning system. So that kind of prevents, if one patient is given one single individual room, that cross infection or through aerosols is not going to happen. If it all happens, it will be controlled. It will be contained. So then we should also look at some aspect of flexibility into hospitals when we plan new hospitals. And this term being used very loosely, let's try to understand, have some insight of what flexibility means in a healthcare environment.
Architect Varun Sharma, we have Architect Chandrika Sahai, who is asking about the flexibility aspect. So let me see if I can bring her in and understand what is the kind of question she has related to flexibility. And before I go to that, Chandrika, if you're there, please, be there, stay with us, and I'll be getting you in very soon. So before I move into that, I would like to know from someone in Max, Dr. Lal and Dr. Deepika, who is from Action Group of Hospitals. I would like to know from both, and then Akhil, I will come to you to know how did you design that Tata Trust Hospital in Varanasi in just 10 months? Just give us a brief about that. But before that, yes, Dr. Lal and Dr. Deepika.
So the way forward, I would want to comment that I come from a hospital which is a JCI hospital, and we do procedures which are by far the most high quality and the best in the country, if not the world. And I feel in terms of people and processes, we've done a fantastic job as far as the South Asian region is concerned. The challenge that usually comes to tertiary or quaternary care hospitals is because the infra is already done. So, I'll give you an example. In today's situation, when a patient comes to the hospital, the patient lands to a flu clinic, which is near the emergency. And for some reason, we never kind of, thought ahead in time to have a proper large holding area for patients. So, we need to take a step back and reprogram and understand that it is now the time to start investing in preventive health. It is now the time to start investing in pandemic health, pandemic management, disaster management. So for example, if I talk about hospitals, the only area where I am satisfied and convinced with the zoning is the OT complex. If I talk about my OPDs, if I talk about my ER, honestly speaking, as a doctor myself, I am not convinced with the zoning which happens in, it may be on the paper, but I am personally not convinced on how the zoning happens. Now we need to come with systems where, we have a separate HVAC system, we have a separate AHU, which, has a holding area, and we have areas to hold patients. Very simple example, a patient walks in with a suspected COVID patient. We do a test. It takes about 24 hours for the results to come. What happens to that patient in these 24 hours? Today, what we are doing is we are actually keeping him in makeshift holding areas, which actually exposes not just the other patients, but also healthcare workers. So I think the future lies in the fact that we need to foresee what is coming at us. We need to have the solutions today on what can happen tomorrow. And I think COVID-19 is the best situation for us to, put the ingredients together and mix it well.
Amazing, Dr. Lal. Like the way that you put it is very beautiful, saying that we need to step back and reprogram. We need to step back and reprogram. I would like to know in one or two sentences from Dr. Deepika, like what do you think? Where is the future? What is one key thing that we need to take care, in terms of making futuristic, capable healthcare facilities?
So as mentioned by everyone, we all as architects and designers of the healthcare sector, they all are focusing on the infrastructure. They are focusing on patient safety. But till now, nobody actually thinks about the healthcare worker safety. That is one area which should be incorporated while designing any hospital. Right now, it's a compulsion that we people are now moving towards the technology. See the countries, there is a country wherein they have used AI to see a CT scan of a COVID patient. Now, what they do is that they just differentiate that COVID patient lung CT from the normal respiratory problems, and that differentiation is done within 10 seconds. Imagine the kind of exposure time which has been minimized by using the AI or the robotics and other things, which needs to be integrated while designing any healthcare. Yes, I understand who is going to bear that cost. That is something that has to be looked into. But ultimately, technology plays a major role, which needs to be integrated with the infrastructure designing at the ground level when we are working on paper. Later on, bringing the technology is a major Herculean task to integrate into the current scenario. That is what I think is the futuristic thing which should be taken care of.
Thank you so much. Akhil, you wanted to add something?
Just a quick point when we're talking about modularization of spaces, airlock lobbies is something that people don't speak about as much. Airlock lobbies have been integral to critical areas. Now these airlock lobbies need to move out of critical areas too and become junctions within a healthcare facility. Because a great amount of what we're talking about, air conditioning and ventilation flexibility, can be brought by dividing the spaces with these airlock lobbies. That's it, simple point.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that on. Mr. Parthanath, you wanted to share something about the R&D that you are doing, right?
Yeah.
Quickly, if you can share, please.
As you had mentioned at that time, whether it is possible to have a zero emission. Technically, if we see that zero emission is basically, it's 3 categories has been given by CARB. There are 3 categories of plywood which are available. That is the E2, E1, and E0 level of plywood which are available in the market. Out of that, whatever products are Greenply is producing, it's in the E1 category, which is having 8 milligram of your formaldehyde in a sample of around 100 gram of a plywood. This specific plywood which we have recently introduced, this zero emission, it has got a plywood which the formalin level is only less than your 3 milligram in a 100 gram of a plywood. This is the criteria which has been set by CARB. But when we have tested it internally, we could find that our resin that we have introduced in our making of this plywood, it has got only 0.14 milligram, which can be considered as zero only. So
I've just received a video from the tech team. So
yeah, if you can just play that.
If that is there, yeah, I'll run that one. Okay, give me a moment.
Yeah, it will show you the color also, how the formalin changes in a distilled color. Whatever the concentration of formalin increases, the color will change from transparent to pale yellow, then to dark yellow.
Zero level emission. Now it is the solution. It does not have any color, and this one is E1 level. It is little bit yellowish, and this one is E2. It is highly, this one yellowish, and it is having respiratory tract infection, eczema, skin irritation, and in course of time it may cause also carcinogenic, that is our plywood small pieces. So now it is boiled with toluene. The chemical is there. As toluene is heavier than formaldehyde, so formalin is evaporated and condensed. This vapor is condensed acetone solution. If this is the testing result, how much formaldehyde contains in it. Yeah, all these 3 have been tested. These are market sample, market plywood, which is having E2. And E1 is our normal plywood, marine and other plywoods. And E0 is our 700. Health is the principal consideration of everything. So now we should be very much careful for health. So we should go for this one, E0 level. I will request every manufacturer to go for this E0 level solution.
So coming back to this, thank you so much. And I think like there has never been a greater consciousness and greater requirement or greater thought about, about this kind of health friendly products than it is today. So moving ahead with the final questions, I would like to invite someone from the attendees, Chandrika. Let me see if Chandrika is there. Tech team, is Chandrika there? I cannot see her, find her by the name. Tech team, if you can inform, by the time I'll just move ahead with the other questions and the final question. And Tech team, please inform me if Chandrika and Shilpa also wanted to ask something. If they're there, just let me know. I'll just bring them in for the questions. They're all architects and they're also doing healthcare facilities, and they have got some questions for the esteemed set of panelists, speakers out here. So my final questions, so that we round up the whole thing, is about messages. It is said that the small healthcare facilities, or the local healthcare facilities, the small ones which are around, they are not very much conscious about a lot of things like safety parameters, accessibility issues, all these things, kind of things. And they're not also concerned about the upgradation factor. I understand their economic limitations and all that, but what is your message? What is your message, so that this kind of talk that we are doing should percolate down, So any one of you would like to give a one-liner message, please feel free, just unmute yourself and speak.
So can I take that?
Yes, any one of you can take, and all of you can take, yes.
So I would rather say that I think, this, COVID situation is going to stay in the market, and, everybody has to be mindful in terms of helping each other at this stage. It's very important that the bigger institutions should step in and try and stabilize the smaller ones at this stage. In terms of, what we are doing, at just an example, I think all of us, can put our head around it. What we are trying to do, we are just adopting certain nursing homes and certain clinics of the doctors who can actually need some PPE support, who need some help in terms of deep cleaning the place. We are just, because if we are a bigger institution, can always lend a hand to the smaller ones to stand up at this stage. And that is how the progressive industry will work, because healthcare is not bigger institution play. It's a chain of activity. It has to start from the doctor clinic. It has to go to the primary center, secondary, and bigger ones will get benefited. So today, if the bigger institution think, oh, it's very good that smaller ones are dying because of the situation, that's a wrong approach, according to me. What we have decided is we're going to adopt 10 or 15 clinics and hospitals and nursing homes nearby and doctor clinics whom we are going to support to ensure they come back to normal. So it's not near normal for us or the industry or a hospital specific. We have to see the entire ecosystem to be sustainable over a period of time so that everybody progresses. It can't be just one man show at the end of the day.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. What better way to percolate the good things and practices happening around can be with the bigger ones hand-holding the ones who need help. Wonderful, amazing. I'm really so happy to hear. Please add on, all of you, anyone of you.
I think we as Indians, especially, we have a very limited civic sense. So I think with this COVID-19, it's actually ramping up our civic sense and hygiene quality anyhow. And I'm hoping, and I think it's already true, that it'll become muscle memory. When your hygiene becomes a muscle memory, then you will force the small clinics to be to that level of your muscle memory. I think it'll automatically start happening. If I don't want clean, why would he give me clean and spend money on it? So I think it's going to be a cycle where we as customers, patients, whatever, will have a muscle memory of more hygiene and safety that will be applied to clinics default moving forward. That's my hope, and I think that's the direction it's going to see.
So I'll probably want to, at the cost of repeating myself, want to pitch in and say that, usually the focus of any healthcare organization is towards the higher end surgical work, the tertiary care work, etc. And in that bargain, we've actually lost out on investing time, energy, and probably, money in preventive modalities. And it simply doesn't mean that we start doing more prevention. It basically means that we design our preventive processes, our preventive infrastructure in a way that, it is user friendly. It is something that doesn't take the whole day of a person who comes in and is very convenient. And patch this with home care facilities where patients know or rather people know when to come to the hospital and when not. So I think all of this together, we have all the ingredients on the table. We just need to mix it well and, you know, come out with a good product.
Please.
You know, the principle of smart cities is about developing your neighborhoods, right? And typically, what Dr. Lal is talking about, preventive care, it comes outside of the asset class, which is healthcare. So, as a smart city or a node within a smart city, a hospital can influence all non-healthcare assets in terms of how they can improve upon preventive care, in terms of testing, or just basic dissipation of information. So that's it, a little point from our end.
So I would just pitch in with a small message that definitely all the healthcare people and whoever at the helm of it, they should come together and make some kind of a guidelines in this crisis time, which can be adopted universally in a particular area or a city, so that all these points of, you know, healthcare, home care, and adopting, that can be utilized and that can be done in a in totality. Why to do it as an individual organization? Let's all come together and do it. That's the need of the time, and maybe the government should also be roped into it for all this purpose.
Yes, absolutely. And as a media, we really want whatever best practices we can, you know, find, get, or discuss. These things should move as education, as, you know, as like the way that Harish has said, like, you know, the bigger ones handholding the smaller ones or those who need help, and thinking of other better ways of doing it. Because unless and until, as a community, overall, we are spreading the best practices, there is no other way out to keep it limited to only a certain few. So with this thing, I'm just going to call in someone who is asking a question. She's Shilpa. She's Shilpa. I think Shilpa is already in. Yes. Yes, Shilpa, are you there? Hello, Shilpa.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. All can hear you very well. Yes.
Hi,
What is
hi
your question?
This was a lovely conversation and a lot of knowledge. I just had one quick question. So evidence-based healing design is a really big research, you know, based studies done all over the world and the West, which improves patient outcome, quality of medical staff, you know, their stress levels, aspects like analyzing bedside manners, patient privacy, comfort, healing design. So I would like to know, you know, what is the scope of this in India? Are we doing it to better our analysis, our design?
Can I come in? Hello.
Shilpa, we missed the last line.
Are we doing this in India to better our analysis, design operations and processes?
Evidence-based
The gap
design.
between design, build, operation, and patient and staff well-being.
Got it. So Architect Manchanda is going to respond to this, and anyone else also can respond to the same question. Yes, Architect Manchanda.
Just a small note on this. What exactly is evidence-based design? Is basically learning from your past experiences and observing what, how you designed a building and how it performed, how the various stakeholders were able to function in that environment. So as any good architect would do, we go back to our facilities that we design, we interact with the hospital staff, be it from the doctors to the nurses to various other people. And we do learn from that experience and come back, and when we do a new project, put that experience, that is the evidence that we have gathered from those projects, into how we can improve the situation, how infection control can be improved, how stress levels can be reduced, how bringing in a green courtyard or a healing garden can improve the time required for a patient to recover. So these are all things which are happening all over the world and also happening in India, though maybe not at a very formal level, but yes, at individual levels, this thing is happening.
Okay. So Shilpa, I hope this answers to your question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shilpa, for joining in. Thank you, Shilpa. So, here is an ongoing chat that is going on, and there is a lot of people who have, addressed different panelists. And if any one of you would like to answer to any of these things, that will be really good. And I'm still, I'm finding if Chandrika is still there, and then we'll close in just 2 minutes. So, any final question or anything that you'd like to give? Yes, Architect Ajay. Yes, Gupta. Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to extend to what
yes,
Shamit has said. The evidence-based design is always there. That's a misuse or overly. But now, actually, what evidence is to a human level evidence, right? I feel, I do. So that's a very good parameter. But we also need to actually start simulating. We actually simulate with data which is collecting through people, what they're operating, how they're operating. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck to your one operation which you learned from, right? You need to learn very fast. You need to learn very fast, very fast from everywhere. So I think it'll be data-driven, actually, not only evidence-based moving forward. And that's what we're doing right now. It's only evidence is not good enough anymore. I think I just wanted to say that.
So I want to add something to Ajay's remark, and actually it's interestingly, I would say it's interestingly ironical and conflicting, a little bit conflicting. So an example I can give you is that the biomedical engineering at my hospital, when we started getting very huge volumes of COVID-19 patients, they did an in-house study, and you must have read in the papers that they started using one ventilator for 3 patients. So that is the kind of innovation that we need to bring into the infra. And when I come to evidence-based, the concept of evidence-based does not mean that it needs to be done that way and that is the only way of doing it. So the evidence needs to be intelligently used to see how innovatively it can be utilized to, expand the kind of services that we offer, how to expand the spectrum of offerings. And I think that's an important aspect of how we need to interpret and evidence-based I would say infrastructure.
Wonderful. Anyone else would like to add to that?
Just to Dr. Dalal, I think totally, if garbage in, garbage out. So I think it's all about what you put in, what comes out, right? So I totally agree to that. There's no way around it. So what you put in is more important than what you get out of it. That's for sure. So that's the difference. Maybe one artist.
So we are going to close with this last one remark from each one of you for the government and business leaders in healthcare who are planning to expand. Definitely all are, but then decentralization, all these things will happen, and expansion and all that will happen, and more healthcare facilities will be required. Definitely. What is your one-liner message? Which area they should really should not compromise on? One-liner message, and then we close. Yes.
So if you ask me for a one-liner in today's situation, I think
I know it's difficult.
the only thing I can think of is capacity building. So,
capacity building, wonderful. Yes.
I'd like to add to that capacity building with, as Varun very rightly said, modular, flexible design so that things are easily adaptable to various kind of situations as they happen. And the time to invest is now, because for healthcare investors, because this is it has shown us that we are really lacking in capacity, as Dr. Lal Relly said. This is a time to invest, and that is what is going to be required.
Yes.
So I think it's easier building the infrastructure, but very difficult to get the right manpower to handle that. Still, there are many setups which are lying where there are not sufficient manpower. So that is one area which the government should actually focus along with building up the infrastructure and gearing up for the increased number of capacity.
Sure. My one-liner would be, actually, we should just drop what we have learned. Just use common sense right now. I think common sense will help us. I truly believe common sense will be the killer now. I think that is what it is.
Very rightly said, Ajay.
So next.
I would rather say that, the time to relook at, I think I would pick the madam's point, which is just now mentioned, Dr. Deepika. I think infra we are creating. I think there's high time we should look at the manpower very crucially at this stage. As far as this, pandemic has brought into light, nursing is something which we should, as India, should open eyes to something like nursing very soon. It's going to be a disaster that you will end up with no nursing in this hospital, in this industry itself, because there's so much of drain happening. Nobody is adopting nursing as a profession. I think high time we should start focusing on nursing big time. That is a talent pool which is big gap. It is silently coming up in the industry. We might end up creating beds, but there won't be anybody to service it. So this big time we should start focusing on nursing, which is a very, very crucial area. We are making medical colleges. We are doing everything right, but there's a huge vacuum which is getting built up, which nobody is noticing. I hope focus comes back. We reward our nursings. We pay them the rightful things to all of the nursing so that they stick around in India and work for us.
So no services drain for the nurses. Nurses should happen, and we should be, kind of nurturing this profession and trying to, increase the availability of nurses. So next.
I would like to add to this, from the manufacturer side, whatever the government right now, whatever is available is that the quality parameters are available. But with respect to health, how the product should perform, that is missing right now. And what is the most important at this point is to formulate something where what product and how this would affect the health should come into focus.
Yes. Even I think one thing in this regard, that there should be questions, like, a lot of people coming with a lot of products and all that. There should be questions. There should be a real, this thing, going into the technical details and R&D of the products and everything. And then only real kind of, good kind of products can be brought into that space, which really needs health safe products. So I would like to move to architect Ashok Kumar.
Yeah, I think this corona pandemic has come more like an eye-opener for all of us, especially the two kind of people, the healthcare planners like all of us, and also the healthcare managers who are there in the panelist. So because the challenge here is to see as to how we can really best control and curb the infection and all these kind of things. And it's very heartening to see that, just in last about 3 months time only, the running hospitals across the country to, in the process to curb this situation or handle the situation of COVID, the infection control and all these hygiene and then the protocol of the health and all that has been truly adhered to. And that is the result that even healthcare professionals like, doctors, paramedics and nurses, they all have been dealing with things quite successfully. No doubt, as probably Dr. Deepika mentioned, that we need to be more careful about the healthcare professional as well. So I think once we follow this practice of better hygiene and health protocol in hospitals while functioning, while operation and functioning, I'm sure this will go a long way helping all of us, in patients, attendants, all the staff, doctors, and everybody around. So that's the message I would like to convey.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, Dr. Lal, you would like to add something?
I would say that, all said and done, institution is built not on bricks and mortar only, but we need to make sure that, all aspects of healthcare today that have failed us in this pandemic to an extent, we should all get together and, this is the time to unite. I just want to, as a closure, share a very interesting incident. When I head towards my house every day, I cross the Delhi Cant. And the moment I cross the barrier, it has something written there. It is respect all, suspect all. I think, that is the motto with which the Indian Armed Forces operate. And hence, as healthcare workers, because we deal with stuff which is very serious stuff, COVID-19 is just one of them. I just want to tell you, coronavirus has another 35 infections which we deal with and have been dealing with. So we need to take our guards up. We can never let the guard be down. And all the support functions, whether it is infra, whether it is engineering, whether it is biomedical engineering, whether it is housekeeping, whether it is, I would say the maintenance and repair, they all need to stand behind us. And that is the only way we can fight through this pandemic.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. And definitely moving to Akhil and architect Varun Sharma.
I mean, two words in those sense: speed of construction. I mean, we built a 6 lakh square feet hospital in 12 months, and it can only become faster than this. So if you want to increase capacity, it's going to be frugal innovation to get speed of construction.
Akhil, you know, one thing I know, I've just today understood what are kind of things we have kind of missed, and it's not possible to take in this webinar. And these are so very important. So let me announce we are coming with another one, filtering out and distilling the important, you know, messages that we have got from this very crucial and important webinar. And definitely the speed of construction and these things is going to be one very important point that I'll be taking.
So sorry, just to complete those 2 points: speed of construction and asset intelligence. We need data lakes to be able to do something with them, and you need to build fast. Those are the 2 final messages for today.
Very important, very important and crucial. And finally, moving to Architect Varun Sharma. Yes. I think there's some network issue. So with this we end this webinar. It was really a lot, you know, a lot of eye-opening for a lot of us, and I think I've taken a little bit more time than what I was supposed to take. Usually the webinars are around 1 hour 15 minutes with some questions for 10 minutes, but then this is such a crucial you know, subject that I could not but take this extra time. So I have to tell you, all the attendees and all is still now, I'm glad like more than 100 are still watching. So this important subject will be story in Surfaces Reporter magazine, and maybe I get in touch with you for more inputs which we could not cover in this one. And yes, we are coming with one more webinar, a very important one, filtering out those things which we could not discuss in this one. And yes, we are going to complete this discussion with that. I hope that all of you enjoyed, and it was an interactive one, and you could really you know, give in the points that were so crucially and you know, important for this sector. So with this thing, I would like to say bye to all of you, and definitely looking forward to implementing together a lot of changes, and as a media will stand by your side. Thank you so much.
It
was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care of you.
Bye. Pleasure.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.